Hey guys, how's it going? And welcome back to Over the Bar's Football League weekly show. And what a cracker of an episode I have for you today. I'm delighted to be joined by Dave from OverTheBar Town podcast, which is a Luton Town podcast. And I can hear the first sort of message being screamed at me. Well, if you're in the chair again, surely you'd have Ben beside you. If you listened to the last episode, you'd realize that Ben is now in America. He's over in New York, and hopefully while he's over there, we're going to get some absolutely cracking vlog videos, so keep an eye out for those on the channel. Anyway, back to this episode. In this episode, we're taking a deep dive into the world of Luton Town, the good, the bad, and unfortunately, some of the ugly as well. Just before we dive into Luton Town, Dave, you want this opportunity to introduce yourself, talk about your content, where can people find you on social media?
Okay, I'm Dave, OverTheBar. We do podcasts on a weekly basis and sometimes previews if we can get people to join in. We're on YouTube, OverTheBar. We're on all the other places you can find your podcast. And we started up a few seasons ago, initially just because there weren't any other Luton podcasts around apart from the Supporters Trust one. Now there seems to be a plethora of them. But, you know, we just have a chat. If we just feel we're chatting about Luton Town and football and results and games and, you know, just a chill out one rather than, you know, some people's go a bit over the top at times. And, you know, we just have a chat about it. And we record on a Monday. We put out our responses on a Tuesday. And we're on the socials at OverTheBar on all of them, X, Blue Sky, Insta and all the other things that you can be on. And, yeah, we quite enjoyed the chat. There's 4 of us and we just chat live. It's great.
So you've made a move from Twitter to Blue Sky. You're one of the early birds there. That's not something I've actually sort of dived into yet.
We're on both. At the moment, we haven't cut the other one off. We're just seeing how the land lies because, you know, obviously the Blue Sky people are the people that originally made Twitter, weren't they? So, you know, you're thinking what's going on. But and then Elon Musk might just get a bit unhappy if everybody disappears onto that other platform. So we're just hedging our bets at this stage.
So the first question I always ask whenever we get people come on the podcast is to talk about how they started first supporting their club. Was it through family that you found yourself a Luton fan? Was it perhaps through relocation of work? Was it where you grew up?
100% family. I live 4 miles from Luton. It's the only league club in Bedfordshire. So back in I know I don't look so old. Thank you in advance, everyone. But back in 1969, my father decided to take me to football to keep me off the streets of all things, let alone the 70s would have been a terrible time to take your kid to football. And I was one of those proverbial kids that was passed from the back of the stand down to the front to sit at the front of the Oak Road, which is now the away end. And I remember sitting there watching some fantastic football. I think it was Queen's Park Rangers were playing and you know, some of the team that they had there was legendary, really. It was 0-0, but you just get hooked. But now football at Luton is a family thing. My cousins come with me, their kids come with me. They've seen me bring my children there. And there's been a group of us that have been going for as long as that. My son used to come with me, but now he works for the club, so he actually can't come with me. He's there all the time. Yeah, and I love with Luton is because of, 1, it's local, 2, they're the only league team. But once you go to that stadium, once you get in your own stadium, whatever club you support, it's magic, isn't it? And as a kid, you're thinking, I walked into that stadium and don't forget, it's not a large stadium, but back in them days, they were getting 22, 23,000. And I'm walking in and thinking, I can't believe so many people support Luton. The same thing my young son said to me when I took him through the turnstiles for the first time, and there was 8,000 in there. So, you know, it's all relative. I've seen good times and bad times, but you fall in love with your club and then you've got to stick with them because the only people that are loyal in football are the supporters. And that's how I become a Luton fan and have been since like 69, 70. It's a long time, isn't it? You think I've put myself out of my misery and just give up on football at this time. It's brilliant, and that's why we love it, and it's a big family thing.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of football, really, is how it sort of brings everyone together. And I'm pretty sure everyone listening to this and watching this back, we can all remember, can't we, as football fans, we all remember our first game. We all, despite it being years and years ago, and you wouldn't remember anything else from that time. You wouldn't remember anything else. You wouldn't remember what you'd done that year, or you wouldn't remember what you had for breakfast that morning. But I think it's the first time we sort of climb those steps and you see the pitch out in front of you. That memory, it really never leaves you, does it?
No, it doesn't ever leave you. And the other thing I would say about the same thing is, like, you'd see football on the television and then you walk into the stadium, and the first time I went away and I go into sort of White Hart Lane, I'm thinking, it looks bigger on the TV and things like that, just like you're not wrong. And it is all about that. No one really remembers their second game. And, but I've seen some great players at Luton Town. They're not playing for Luton, but playing against Luton Town. George Best, playing football at Kenilworth Road was like Rodney Marsh. Crazy times. And so football's fantastic if it goes well. And then, football is football, and you've got to remember sometimes it's not real life. And as long as you go down those roads, you should be fine, I hope.
Yeah, it's one of them things where you mentioned it sort of just then about the fans, and the fans are always loyal. And it's something that me and Ben, we almost say it practically every episode. So unfortunately, the EFL isn't this sort of this very sort of God land where everything sort of goes well. There's a lot of sort of misownership, from sort of high levels within football. And one thing that we always refer back to the fans, because managers come and go, players come and go. But at the end of the day, your fan in that seat is going to be there, it's going to be there for life. So I think, tying it back to the fans and loyalty is definitely a good point to make. But anyway, what we'll do, we're going to kick the show off talking about a very popular topic that myself and Ben have discussed a lot on this channel, and people are probably sick to death of us talking about it, but we're going to do it anyway. We're going to talk about the gap between the Championship and the Premier League. I think it's something that, from the outside looking in, you think, okay, well, you're good enough to get promotion from the Championship. You might find your level within the Premier League. But the opposite, in effect, is actually true. The example I like to use is Burnley. They went up playing absolutely terrific football. They're playing out from the back. It was really good to see. It's the modern way, really, of sort of playing football. They transitioned that into the Premier League, and they were being caught out, and they were conceding too many goals really by playing out from the back, because these bigger boys within the division simply found them out. And I'd actually argue, and I'll get your opinion on this in a second, I'd actually argue that the Premier League now is actually almost two sort of mini leagues. And what I mean by that is you've got your sort of traditional top six, the likes of your Manchester clubs, your Liverpools, your Arsenals, those sort of sides. You've now sort of got the likes of Brighton and Villa and Newcastle, who are sort of pushing into that pack. Then you got the sort of the rest of the sides within the division, which, let's be honest, on any given season, realistically, could find themselves in a sort of relegation fight. So what's your sort of opinion on the sort of Premier League as a whole, on the gap? Do you see it as too many leagues?
Well, do you know what? When we got promoted season before last, and we got up there, the first thing I noticed was it is absolutely a media circus, and it's not football as I remember football when we was in the divisions before. But there is no way teams like we support at this stage, without huge financial backing, that you can get anywhere near that top six, anywhere near it, anywhere near Europe. You've got to be super lucky to have a run and get there. You're right. There's the elite clubs, and they will stay elite because they keep getting the money, they get the turnover. And don't forget, in the Premier League, not only do you get prize money for your position for where you finish, but you also get extra money when your TV revenue, for instance, you're required to do so many plays or games on television, and then everyone after that, you earn £1 million. And look at the clubs that are always on it: Manchester City, Manchester United, Arsenal. Where are they? Well, not Manchester United at the moment, but Arsenal, Liverpool. They're all up the top. They've all got bags and bags of money. And that is what spoils it for me. Then you've got your clubs that are on the verge. The clubs that, like Luton Town, should aspire to be. Clubs like Bournemouth who are trying to get into that thing. Brighton, who have established themselves. And every year they stay up. Every year they can get stronger. So it then becomes a bit more of a struggle for other teams to compete against them. And then you get people like Ipswich, like ourselves, like going up, and even Burnley, really. I didn't expect Burnley to fall in the good way they did, but they weren't prepared for how good the teams that have been up there from one season. They'd only been down for one season, if you remember, how good they were and how good they've become because they've re-established themselves. Look at Brentford. You wouldn't think Brentford would stay up there, but there is that bottom mini league of people that come up from the Championship. You've either got to be really, really, really good, or you have to have a huge amount of money to spend to try and stay up. That's what Nottingham Forest did. They blew their budget, didn't they? They bought a whole new squad. It's paid off because they've stayed up and they're doing all right this season. But what if it didn't? So those are my issues with the Premier League. And I don't think, it's the promised land for your club because of the income it brings in. It saves our club. Our club has gone from nothing to what we did last season. And the money from that is amazing for us. But we need more of it to even try and get back up there because we can't compete and we're not a club that spends money. So if you want to stay up there, you've got to spend. And if you don't spend, you'll find it very, very difficult because you can only stay up there with a decent set of players.
Definitely that. And the last sort of point I'll make on it is that I think when you're a Championship side, so pushing towards Premier League football, I remember it last season, with Ipswich, and I don't actually hide my bias on this show, but if you look at it last season with Ipswich, the journey is 100% much better and much more fulfilling than the actual destination of the Premier League. I'm not one of these sort of conspiracy theorists who believe in corruption and that the Premier League's corrupt. But realistically, you look at decisions sort of this season that have gone against us that we haven't got. And you look at, I think it was Nottingham Forest, I want to say last season, where they put tweets out on Twitter, really sort of asking questions of the referees and the FA and really getting themselves in a lot of trouble. And I was sat here as a neutral sort of going, that seems a little bit sort of baby throwing toys out a tram, to be perfectly honest. But then when you sort of get here and you realise the sort of state of the likes of VAR and won't touch on it, but David Coote and everything that's come out about that, because we've got to be very careful how we talk about that.
Yeah,
it's not a surprise that fans are really sort of saying that the journey is better than the destination. But anyway, what we will do, we are 12 minutes in. We are going to circle around to Luton Town. We are going to get there. After last season being in the Premier League, and I know the back end of last season, there was no win in 5 games, only the draw against Wolves. Realistically, when you came down from Premier League, I was expecting, maybe expecting is the wrong word, but when you look back at what Rob Edwards had done previously with your club, I was expecting a lot more fight from your sort of team. What was the aim from a fan's point of view coming in?
Firstly, I've said this many times. If you were a Luton fan after that escapade in that Premier League, like you say, the little circus, the journey there was fantastic. And being coming back down, if you thought that we were going to bounce straight back up with no issues, then you'd have been a bit, I don't want to say deluded because that's derogatory, isn't it? But you'd have been a bit silly. My thought on it was, we've got the strongest squad we've ever had. We've had broken transfer records. Up until we got promoted, I think our biggest transfer was like a couple of million, nothing, next to nothing. And we broke our transfer record 4 times in a week. But at that time, it was only £5 million. That's not a lot of money, is it? We've recently bought McGuinness and from Cardiff, and that's rumoured to be about 10 to 12 million pounds. Right, so that's the biggest amount of money we've ever spent. But we have a squad, the biggest valued squad we've ever had, and we were competing against the light. And we know we took. You mentioned the last 5 games. I get that, but we had some great games against Arsenal, against Manchester United, against Liverpool, West Ham and Tottenham. And, we were in those games and you're thinking, well, we can't be that team that's going to go down and not perform. So I think our goals, although the management is saying we want to go straight back up, I think you've got to be realistic and go, if we're competing for that playoff place, I'd be happy. But it hasn't worked out like that at the moment and it's been disastrous. So my expectation was we won't have a relegation fight. My expectation was we'll be too good for that. And naivety says never say that, because sometimes that goes against you. So I think if you put your expectations correctly, then you'd say you'd like to be top half of the table going for those playoff positions. I think realistically, any Luton fan that thought we might be first or second might have been a tiny bit overstepping the mark. But, you could have said that against Ipswich last season. You would have thought that Leeds would have walked the division at one point, and they didn't. And they, spontaneously combusted there towards the end of the season. So it's a strange one, isn't it? Because I don't think that Luton Town are as bad as they have been performing. And I think at the beginning of the season, I would have said we'd have been aiming for that top 6 spot, and we've been happy if we got it. And then just rebuild from there, because the parachute payments will continue to help us.
Yeah, to be fair, it's quite nice actually sitting with a level-headed fan, because sitting, me and Ben do the show as neutrals, a lot of our sort of fan opinion when we try to read the room about a certain subject to do with a certain club, a lot of the time, you do your research on the likes of Twitter, of Facebook occasionally, and a lot of fans seem to be losing their heads quite easily at Luton Town. I think, okay, you got to look at the league position and go, this isn't where we expected to be. This isn't good enough, really, by Luton Town standards. But I think the Championship is severely underrated in terms of how tough of a division it actually is. Forget Ipswich last year. That's an anomaly. Teams don't bounce up from League One to the Championship to the Premier League in successive seasons. That simply doesn't happen. I think the Championship is quite an underrated league in terms of how tough it actually is. You've got sides in there, and I know they're doing well this season. You've got sides in there like Sunderland, who, for a while were sort of stabilising the Championship, and they've sort of done things the right way, and they're now pushing up, looking like they're going to mount a really good sort of top 6 sort of charge this season. So they're doing really, really well. You've got other sides in there who we could go through. You could go through how many of them have been in the Premier League and how many are sort of now finding their feet in the Championship. You can look at sides of the Championship that have come up from League One and again have stabilised, have got there and are doing things the right way. You look at teams like Portsmouth, who you've got to ignore the league table. Look at sides like Portsmouth, who have come up from League One, who are an established Championship side, and are now finding it incredibly difficult. This Championship, I don't think, and I'll get your opinion on it in a second, I don't think this Championship this season is easy for any team. I think every team's going to struggle. Every team's going to have blips and road bumps along the way. So what do you make of the Championship as a whole this season? Because it is a very difficult league.
I think anyone can win it. That's the first thing. If you look at the table and you think about Sheffield United, they started with a 2 points deduction, didn't they? So technically, they'd be out in front. And, I wouldn't have said that about them from last season. It's a very, at the moment, it's a couple of wins for any team will shove them up the table quite dramatically. There are some decent teams in there, and they're all trying to get to that promised land, aren't they? That's what they're trying to do. It's a strong division. I think it's a more competitive league than the Premier League, because anyone can do anything, and I think that's what makes it more exciting. But we all want to play the top clubs, don't we? So I think this division, I love it in this division. I don't want to stay in it, though. I do want to stay in it right now, but I don't want to say I never want to go up again. But you look at the teams. I'm just looking down at my phone here: Leeds, Sheffield United, Burnley, Sunderland at the top. Unbelievable. They've all been up there, haven't they? I won't mention Watford too much. West Brom, Borough have all been up there. Blackburn have won it. Swansea's been up there. Sheffield Wednesday's been up there. We've been up there, which is a miracle of all points. So, and this is what happens because the gap between league, you're right, the jump up between League One and the Championship to the Premier League is immense. To do it in 2 seasons is diabolically amazing. But teams like us, or teams of a lower ilk who get up there, Derby have been up there, haven't they? They and this division is so hard to get out of and so hard to stay in compared to the top division, where if you're up there and you've got the money, you can. So this one is more exciting, but anyone can win it. But I suspect this season it could be Leeds, if I'm honest.
Yeah, the problem is with Leeds, without going sort of too deep into them, the problem with Leeds is that, you said it towards the top of the show, is that they do seem to spontaneously combust. They seem to be up there and all of a sudden, like a bomb gone off, and they're falling off and with nowhere to be seen. But as you circle back around towards Luton Town, I'm going to ask you the $1 million question, and I've got my own opinion on it, which I'll tell you in a second. Where has it gone wrong for you boys this season? Because we look at it from a neutral point of view. And again, it's always difficult from a neutral point of view because we don't get time to watch every single team in the EFL play every single game, all 90 minutes. But for me, I look at it, I think, well, Rob Edwards has proven he's a good enough manager for this level. He's a very, very good manager. We can't deny that. The players on paper, again, are more than good enough, I think, to be higher up in the league. Is it more of a tactical thing? Does something need to be sort of tweaked tactically? You look at the last couple of games, according to BBC Sport, you've lined up in a sort of similar to a 3-5-2 formation. Your strikers really aren't in form. So does something need to be changed there, perhaps? Where has it gone wrong?
If that's the $1 million question, isn't it? And why has it gone wrong? I think we can start back towards the end of last season where I think the board have said there's unscrupulous agency banding names around, and one of them, Ted Mengi, who was really good in the Premier League, but he's come down to this division and he doesn't really look like he wants to play for Luton Town, which looks quite sad. We lost Ross Barkley. Ogbeni came to Ipswich. We lost Lukonga. And they really weren't replaced with equivalent players, sadly. So has it gone wrong there? Possibly. The formation, does Rob know his best team? Don't think so at the moment. Injuries have not been helpful. And we've tried everything. And you're right, the strikers have not been performing well. And some of the Luton fans will be saying on social media and everywhere else, I'll give Joe Taylor a chance. Unproven, really, but he hasn't had a chance to prove himself. And I think that's a difficult one because, like you say, on paper, we've got a decent squad. We've got some decent players. Carlton Morris up front, Adi Bayo up front, did really well in the Premier League, and we're just not giving them enough supply, and we're not scoring enough. Our midfield is decimated. With the exception of Krause, we haven't been playing great in midfield. And I think we're really missing the Barkley connection. I think we're really missing Lukonga as well. If only we could have purchased either of those. Ross Barkley was never going to stay, let's be fair. And I think we just lost it there. The formation of a team changes every week. And we just haven't hit any form whatsoever. And it's so demoralising. If I can just point back to when we played Middlesbrough a week or so ago, we're in the game. We're playing well. We've missed a couple of really, really good chances. Middlesbrough score, and you could physically see all the players' heads go down. And that was it. And then we get battered, and we get battered quite easily, 5-1. The same at Leeds. We're not in the game at all there. Leeds score, they're second, the game is done. And I can't pin that on the manager, and I don't understand how the players haven't responded. So what has gone wrong? Are the players falling out of love with Rob Edwards? Is Rob Edwards falling out of love with the game? I don't know. You're right. I think Rob has got it in him to be a decent manager. There's a lot of vitriol on social media platforms and some podcasts, but not my own, asking him to go. I think he can pull it round, and I'm hoping he will. But if he's going to run out of time at some point, if the results and the performances don't change, and I think that's the issue we have. We had a fantastic performance against Watford the other month, and it hasn't been repeated since. And for us, I think we'll be in big trouble if we don't start winning soon. And I don't know what the change is. I can't put my finger on it. If I could literally go, oh, it's this. I'll be down the club tomorrow trying to fix it because it is so disappointing. You could probably tell that my demeanour there has gone down a bit, but it's so disappointing to see practically the same players who were competing against the top level team last season, not competing against Hull City, not competing against Plymouth, not, Preston. I don't even want to keep naming them, but it is that situation where you're hoping your manager can pull it round, but at the moment it doesn't seem like he can. And I genuinely thought he was going when we played Middlesbrough. I thought he'd gone, but he's still here, so it's time to back him for another few games at least before the board probably then get fed up.
Yeah, today you stumbled very well. To be fair, it was a very good sort of segue because I was going to sort of talk next. About the Middlesbrough games, about the Leeds game. Obviously, sandwich in the middle was a really good win. To be fair, on paper. Against the Hull City side here in a very similar, to be fair, the two sort of same sides are in comparable situations. That they're both sort of both clubs really underperforming when we compared to last season and the expectations going into this season. You mentioned there about when a goal goes in, heads drop, the confidence and the belief is gone. That would really worry me as a fan, because when you were talking about that and having your sort of talk just then, I don't know if anyone else listening or watching this from clubs who have had similar sort of experiences in the past. It reminded me how I was talking about Ipswich in League One, within the terms that what I mean by that is it was very sort of depressing almost. It was very sort of stagnated. The whole game was decided upon the first goal, and that was it. There was no confidence, there was no belief in the side. But then for me, if there's no confidence in the side, if there's no belief within that side to actually want to turn it around, it's a famous phrase in football: has the manager lost the dressing room? Have the players stopped playing for Rob Edwards? Is that evident?
It's a difficult one to answer, isn't it? Because we just don't know what goes on in that little room when they go off the pitch. I'd be very surprised if the players don't like him. Have they lost confidence in his ability? Possibly, I don't know. It's difficult to say. But you can say most of the fan base, or some, not let's put this straight, half of the fan base who are anti-Rob at the moment will say he's lost the dressing room. But there's no real proof of that. There was people saying there'd been bust-ups on the training ground. Well, I know for certain there hasn't been. But, they'll perpetuate the myth to get their own point across. How does a manager lose a dressing room? I just don't know. Does he not? They don't like his tactics. Then they're all adults. They should bloody well talk about it, really, shouldn't they? Let's be fair. But possibly has he lost the dressing room? Possibly, but we don't know that for certain. But I would also say that they back him publicly. The board back him publicly. The players back him publicly. Colton Morris, for instance, came out and said they love him 100%. So they all know they're underperforming. So sometimes I think you've got to put the pressure back on the players. The thing is, it's easy to get rid of the manager, but you can't get rid of your assets, which are the players. And if the players are not performing well, then you're stuck with them until the transfer windows come. And then you can't afford to get rid of all of those that are underperforming because it's impossible. And so you get rid of the manager. And then the new manager comes in, and you might be lucky to have that new manager bounce. You might be lucky to have someone who can get more out of your players who have been poor. But the players stay all of the time, even though half the time it's their problem. It's them not performing to their best ability. And tactics do come into it. I get that. If you're playing in the wrong position, I get that too. But it's, one of those things where I think it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. And I genuinely feel that sometimes knee-jerk reactions are not required.
So judging by that, I was going to move on to sort of the main point I was going to sort of make. It seems like sort of for having someone from your podcast on, the first thing that sprung to my mind was, are you Rob Edwards in or are you out? I've made it very, very clear, throughout previous episodes where we've discussed this, I'm firmly Rob Edwards in. I think it's a simple case of the players have just stopped performing for him. I don't know whether that's because of something he's done, whether there has been any internal. We'll never know that. It's one of those things in football. You only see what happens on a Saturday afternoon or a Tuesday evening. For me, it's when you look at players, you named some at the start of the show, like Carlton Morris, Elijah Adebayo, who were so good in the Premier League last season, who have fallen off. You look at players like Alfie Doherty, I know he's currently out, but he should be doing better, I think, within this league when he is fit, and sort of missing him has been a big loss. You look in midfield like some Marvellous Nakamba, who I had really sort of high hopes for coming into the Championship season. But it comes back to that whole thing with the Championship, is that the Championship is a very physical league. In the Premier League, you can get away with a lot more sort of tiki-taka and a little bit more flair and a little bit more pizzazz, if you like. In the Championship, you train that, you get two-footed. There is no messing around within this division. So would you say you are Rob Edwardson?
I was waiting for that. Well, I'm going to be called a happy clapper because I feel that I just want him to turn it around. So at the moment, I want him to stay. However, that might snap after the weekend. It might snap if we don't get another couple of wins under our belt. So he's such a nice guy, and maybe that's the problem. We've all fallen in love with the Rob Edwards that is a nice guy, but maybe he's not as good as we think he is. And I think that's probably what's caused some of the attrition from some other people. But for me personally, right now, I don't want him to go. But that might change in a few weeks' time. And then you'll get a lot of people saying, I told you so. And you should have got rid of him. So I think that's where I am on it. I genuinely think he can put it round, but whether he will, who knows? Difficult.
Yeah, I won't ask you for sort of player names here because, look, I'm not a scout. I don't know player contracts and who's on the market and who's free potentially. But we are only about a month or so away from, which feels absolutely mad. I say that out loud, actually. We're only just over a month away from the January transfer window. And it looks realistically like you guys are going to need a very good window in order to sort of get back to where you want to be. Are the playoffs too far of a push out for now? I'd say so. But we're seeing, look, it's a championship. We're seeing madder things happen. When you look at your squad with the January window fast approaching, what positions would you look to improve? Because from me as a neutral point of view, and feel free, by the way, to absolutely tell me I'm wrong and my head's been lost. Feel free, it's happened before. When I look at your squad on paper and I look at the defensive record, the position that screams out for me is not scapegoat. The position that screams out for me is goalkeeper. I mean, you look at the three keepers in which you have, Kaminsky, Krul, and James Shea. They're all sort of around the age of sort of 32, 36. They are, I know goalkeeper goes further within their career, but they are at the wrong end of their career. And when we're in this modern age of football now, where teams want to play out from the back, and it's not so much keeper gets the ball and hoofs it down, potentially a change is needed there. But I'm not pinning everything. I'm not pinning your defensive record of averaging, conceding 2 goals per game. I'm not putting all that down on a goalkeeper. I'm a keeper myself. But for me, that would be a position I'd be looking at in January. Where else would you be looking at?
I've not really thought about the goalkeeper because Kaminsky's been one of the best goalkeepers we've had for a long time, which is really bizarre to say after what you've just said. I feel that he's quite solid in goal most of the time. He's a good shot stopper. Shea has been a brilliant person for the club, but you're right, we might need to bring someone else in. Where else? I think in the transfer window, I'll be genuinely shocked if Ted and Mengi doesn't leave us. And I think we need to sort of shore up there. We need another striker to help us out. I think we need another good goal scorer, proven goal scorer up front to help out Carlton and Adebayo or Eli, who have not been playing to their full thing. And then we need a dynamic midfielder. Now we have got one joining us. Well, he's joined us, hasn't he, from somewhere with Portugal, I think he was, Fane. But I think we could do with more strength there, and maybe one flair player, that flair player that we had in the likes. And again, we were so lucky to get Ross Barkley last season. Someone in his ilk that can really boss a game and really control the midfield and create from that position. And I think we've missed that. So I think that's what we're gunning for. And if the team are not already dealing with that, I'll be very surprised. But I think we might lose a couple as well. I think we might lose a couple of stalwarts. And I'm saying Mengi because I don't feel that he wants to play for us. And I would imagine, because he got touted around the beginning of this season, and he was going to do an off, but it didn't come through. And then this last week at home, our chairman's board note said some unscrupulous agencies, and you just put 2 and 2 together. And so, yeah, I think we do need to strengthen. I hadn't really thought about the goalkeeper thing before. And I didn't really think of their age because I think Kaminsky's been quite solid. Shea's a good backup. But if they're not planning for the future, you're right, they should get someone else in. But I don't think that's our worst position right now. I think we've got 4 central defenders at the club. We need somebody who doesn't get injured, and we need a real strong, I want to say, game changer in the midfield, and then maybe someone up front. But we'll wait and see.
Yeah, that makes sense. And again, it's why I enjoy having fans on the podcast and fans comment below on YouTube and other sources where you can find us. It's because we only look at it from a neutral point of view. We look at it very much on websites in which you can find, and we look at player ages and how players have been performing. And there's only so much we can actually sort of take from that. That's watching them week in, week out, which is obviously, it can be very, very sort of difficult to get a full opinion. Anyway, when you guys did go up to the Premier League, there was a lot of sort of news media, weren't they, who sort of came in because the Premier League came and said, oh, you got to change this at Kenilworth Road. This has got to be changed. This has got to be adapted. Do you want to go through some of the changes that the ground was forced to undergo, and has any of them had a sort of negative impact?
No negatives at all. Demolished the stupid seaside boxes that we used to have opposite, and built an entirely new stand within 12 weeks. Was amazing. The floodlights, I didn't realise how poor Kenilworth Road floodlights were until we had to upgrade them for the Premier League. And now it's like daylight. And, back in the day, they used to switch the lights off in the crowd. Now you can see every member of the crowd, and it's like, put your sunglasses on because they're so bright. They completely refurbished all the seating in the stadium. We've got safe standing now. We've increased the capacity. The outlets have got bigger outside the stadium. There's a legendary goat curry you can get at Luton Town, and they've encompassed him into the stadium, and so all of that, brilliant. The pitch, brilliant, was a result of the Premier League money, and the Premier League circus that it was and still is. I mean, even me, I was pitch side on TNT Sports at one point, and I'm thinking, this is madness, absolute madness. But yeah, the stadium itself, look, we're going to move from that stadium in a few years' time, and there's going to be a lot of tears shed when we leave it, because the atmosphere in there when it's rocking is brilliant. But the stadium itself has had a bit of a facelift, as I think our chairman once said, and even from the outside it looks different. So it's great. I love it. And also the Domino supporters away end day.
That's probably, and I said it to you before we got recording this evening, that away end is probably my favourite in the country, just because of how unique it is, just because it is proper old school. It reminds me of, so before Brentford moved to the G-Tech, I think it's called, before they moved to the G-Tech there at Griffin Park, and it, as you all know, of course, and it felt very sort of unique there. I remember it was during our relegation season from League One, so from the Championship into League One, but when people moved, the stand, because it wasn't really a stand, it was more of just like gay bodies in under a roof sort of thing. The whole thing, you get fans bouncing. It felt like the stand was bouncing. It was absolutely fantastic, and that sort of old school seems to have really gone from football, and we're now moving into these stadium bowls, which people will know I absolutely detest. There's just no character within them. But as a way to sort of wrap up the show, mate, I know something that all Luton Town fans are proud of is the rise of your club. Take it away, mate. Tell us how proud of that journey you are.
Unbelievable journey, really. When you think about how we got shafted by the Football League and the FA with the 40-point deduction in 2 seasons, and then I suppose our ownership was terrible, and then Gary Sweet in 2020 came and said, we're going to get you to the Premier League by 2020. And we're thinking, that's not going to happen. And then we say 4 years in that stupid Conference League because we thought we were better than we actually were. And then you get promoted and you think, hang on, we're going back. And you could see in the team was getting better and better and better. And then to go up again. And look, I'm old school. I've seen Luton in the first division, the old first division, for a long, long time. 10 years we had in that division. And we got relegated. And I'm thinking, I'm never going to see them in the top flight again. So then to be the unfancied team and get promoted and then bounce through the division in the similar way to Ipswich, but one below, and bounce through in one season, you think, we're in the Championship, what's going on? And every season we consolidated, and every season the togetherness, which is currently not in the team, was getting bigger and bigger, and the belief become more and more that we were going to get to that promised land. It was going to save our club. And it's all with the back of a board who are Luton Town supporters. We haven't got your Disney chief in. We haven't got your billionaire from Saudi Arabia there. We've got Luton Town supporters, and we're all going on this journey together. And honestly, we all believed it was going to happen. It happened earlier than we thought. And when that penalty got missed at Wembley Stadium, ecstasy. You don't understand, unless you've done it, you don't understand what that's like. You can go up automatically, brilliant. It's a really, really good achievement, and I'm not knocking anyone who does that. But to have that win at Wembley Stadium, you're never going to forget it, and you're never going to forget how it went. And it was amazing. And it was just the tears. I know I'm a grown man. You shouldn't be crying, should you? but the tears of realizing that the club that was almost out of existence because of idiots that were allowed to own it by the Football Association, because of idiots that were running the club into the ground and taking their money out, was grabbed and one in the face. There is a banner at Luton Town. It hangs in our stand. It was hanging at Wembley Way when we got relegated from the league, when we went to the Johnson Paint Trophy. And it says, formed in 1885, betrayed by the FA in 2008. And the Football League. And there is a song they sing quite regularly at Luton about that. And you're going, this is one in the face for you lot, because you thought we were going to go out of business and we didn't. And we're there. And I loved every second of the journey. Would I want to do it again? No, I don't want to go down that far again. But, 2020, whatever any Luton fan or anybody thinks about them, are fans of our club. They're building a brand new stadium, and it's been a miracle of a journey. It's been absolutely brilliant. And I can't wait for the next page. Because I think when we do turn the page, we're going to a new stadium. Maybe we'll be like Brentford. Maybe we'll be like Bournemouth. But, as long as we don't go under, that's the best thing. Because we don't want to lose any more clubs, do we?
No, that's the last thing we want. Unfortunately, there's been too many clubs of late, a couple of years ago, that unfortunately fans have lost their clubs. And that's something I'm pretty sure we can agree. We can sit here and go, I couldn't imagine my life without Ipswich. I'm pretty sure you couldn't imagine your life without Luton Town and going down.
Yeah. It's, what the thing is, you can't imagine life without your football club, but there's more to life than football. But the football club, for me, is the way of my life. It's the way that my family keeps together. It's where we go. And it's been brilliant. And the journey from, all the way from the first division, all the way to non-league, and then all the way back up, I've been lucky enough to see, and I'll never forget it, ever. And, there won't be many fans that can do that.
Mate, that's absolutely fantastic. It's been an absolutely fantastic discussion with you, mate. Just in case anyone missed at the start or they're wondering, where can people find your podcast and what can they expect from you, mate?
You can find us on YouTube, OverTheBar, Spotify, anywhere else you listen to audio for your podcast as well. And we just have a general chat about the state of Luton Town and post-match chat. There's 4 of us that sit around a table, have a beer, and we just like we're down the pub having a chat about the game. And it's not too deep, but if you're looking for something different, come and say hello and leave some comments. It'll all be great.
And you can find us. Well, let's see if I can get this in one take. You can find us at OverTheBar FB on Twitter. You can find us on YouTube. Just type in OverTheBar with the first suggestion that pops up after you search that in. You can find the Football League Weekly show there. You can also find fantastic videos from the German League and also from the Spanish League as well. It's all under the same heading. It's gone over the bar's channel. You'll see a little tab with videos, and all the videos that we post will all be there. We also go live as well. Keep an eye on our Twitter feed for when we will be doing that. And you can find the Football League Weekly on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Again, just type in OTB's Football League Weekly and we will come up. You can, of course, this last one, I think, you can, of course, find us on TikTok as well. We do occasionally post small videos on there, just sort of little bite-sized pieces before the podcasts are released. So hopefully this will work. Thank you very much, guys, for watching. All the best, and we'll see you next time.